You'll see it. You'll see it, chat.
Well, there we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mario.
If you're curious about my thoughts, just go look at what Paul wrote over on his thing.
Oh, yeah. Right here. Yeah. Well, that happened.
Well, it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hashtag Nation of Bills Mafia. Welcome to the hashtag sports presentation of the Buffalo Bills versus the LA Rams post game, sponsored by Mr. Rogers Homes. You can find all of our socials, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook in our link tree. All episodes will be on iTunes and Spotify. The Buffalo Bills falling by 2 points, 44-42 to the Los Angeles Rams in a very unique game. Josh Allen becoming another setting another one of his firsts, basically the first player to throw for 3 touchdowns and rush for 3 touchdowns in a single game. And it will probably be a trivia question at some point. Who's the only player to do that and lose?
Yep.
But that being said, we have scores, we have stats, we have feedback, we have analysis. There's a lot to talk about tonight. And Paul, you know how I am with McDermott's game management.
I know this is a tough one for people who are like, no, Sean's finally getting it. I feel confident, man. People are going to have a lot to say about this game for a long time. And no Bills fan loves to lose a game when you're already in the playoffs to a team trying to stay in the playoff hunt, right? Like that feels below you. Matt Stafford was on another planet today.
He was.
But he had time. There's a lot to unpack. I'm excited to get to it, right? Very excited to get to it. But with that being said, this puts the 1 seed in question for you, which again, I know is the thing that all Bills fans are talking about. That's what they want, is that 1 seed. This very much puts it in question for you, and gave a lot of really not so great tape to Detroit for next week. Don't love that.
A team that had 3 days rest on you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that. Paul, actually, I was wrong in that plight. I actually thought that they didn't. They had an extra game prior to Detroit, but you're right. They did play the Thursday night game, and they do have an extra rest, for Buffalo, and they're at home. Bills have to go on the road again, even though albeit in a dome. Good news for Tyler Bass, I guess, but everyone else, Buffalo left their defense in Buffalo. Seems like.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be great to have like a first round corner you could depend on? Like, wouldn't that be something?
Is that a Elam shot this early?
Yeah,
in the
rolling out Ingram on Nakua. I get it. The Puka Nakua and Cooper Kupp are dynamic playmakers, right? And Nakua's not a little guy. Like, he's a big
I was
dude.
surprised at how big he was. Like, I was surprised when they said he's 6'2", 212. I'm like, that's a big dude right there. And with the combination of Kupp and Stafford just being as savvy as possible. Paul, we had said for weeks that the LA Ram game was not going to be a walkthrough because they were getting healthy. And that is a scary offense when they're clicking like that. And, with the halftime adjustments that are going on, this should be a lesson to the Buffalo Bills and their staff that you just can't wait till halftime to make your adjustments. No. And albeit some questionable game management near the end. That's where I want to start, Paul. I want to start with the game management, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
As you know, I'd like to run a lot of things by my brother and, all the football minds that you and I know and that we collaborate with, a lot of them kind of in agreement. There is 4:40 left on the clock. It is going to be 4th and 7, and you accept a holding penalty.
I know.
To push the Rams. Yeah, you push the Rams out field goal range. McVay's not thinking field goal at all. You have been scoring at will on his defense. He's not going to leave it up to his defense.
Right.
McDermott seems very confident to leave it up to his defense.
He will leave it up to his defense.
And we get the result that we get. But 4:40 went off. Okay, you accept that penalty. They'll probably now you put it in McVay's hands. Do I kick the field goal or do I go for it? Then he has the pressure put onto him. That's the thing that happens. Either he has to burn a timeout or he needs to go for it. If he goes for it and gets it, okay, I understand that. They go for it on 3rd and 17. They pick up 12, and then on the 4th and 5, they pick up another 10.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you not
with
call
the false start penalty that should have been called?
Oh, well, that was. I mean, I'm penalties aside because some penalties
Right.
is a totally
That's
different thing
fine.
we can
That's
talk
fine.
about.
We'll remove that from the argument. That's
Yeah,
fine.
that's fine. The game management, you can't rely on a false start penalty to bail you out of something like that.
Yeah, of course not. Right.
Why are you not calling timeouts after that? After they already get the first?
Yeah, I was really perturbed by that because to me the game is still very much in question, and you
Yes.
let them just roll 2 minutes off the clock because you wanted to conserve your timeouts for after the 2 minutes. And like, don't get me wrong, the Bills had a chance to score with, down at the goal line. They needed 3 timeouts if they were going to try and kick the ball and let the Rams get a first down to beat them on the other side of the touchdown. But you got to have all 3 timeouts for it. So if that's what you were betting on, okay. I think the difference for me there is you let a ton of time go to put yourself in a position to maybe score a touchdown to get kind of close again, and that's where I get frustrated. I would have been calling the timeouts prior to the 2 minute, right? And I agree, accepting the holding penalty. I think they actually ended up with better field position than when they started, that is very frustrating to me because I think McVay probably goes for it. Is the result the same? Well, the result might have been the same, Mar, but
yeah, notwithstanding the result being the same.
But you let the aggressive coach make the aggressive decision and beat you, right?
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
You don't give him 2 passes at it, and you did. You gave him 2 shots at getting a first down again. Why would you do that?
I don't understand. If it's here's the thought process that goes into that situation as far as game management goes. And let me just try to give you guys peel back the fourth wall a little bit. If it's anything less than like 4th and 5, you have to accept the penalty. That's just something you have to do. You haven't been able to stop this team all day. They've been running it at will. They've been getting those short intermediate ones. They were like, let me check it really quick just for you guys, just so all you stat monsters that want to know. They were 11 for 15 on 3rd down, 1 for 1 on 4th down, which we saw. But the point of it was, if it's anything less than 4th and 5, then you accept the penalty. 4th and 7, a little bit tougher to get, especially in a situation like that. You want to think you can trust you. If you trust your defense to get a stop on 3rd and 17, then you got to trust your defense in the same plight that they could stop a 4th and 7. Or if he kicks a field goal, you're still only down 6 and your team has been moving the ball the entire second half. You had 21 points in that fourth quarter.
I think down 6 is ideal at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you got to play for the win. The other part of that, not calling the timeouts when you had to, I understand trying to save them for Josh and the offense. I understand that philosophy completely. However, you're getting run up and down the field. You know what I mean? Let them, if you're going to let them score, The other part was this, the Joe Brady call for Josh Allen to sneak it when you had to burn a timeout then. Either you tell them, listen, here's what I'm telling my team out there. If I'm calling that play, double tight, going to try to shove Josh in for his 3rd touchdown of the game, I am telling them to get on the line immediately. Because at that point, I think there was a minute 11 left, minute 12, something like that.
Yeah.
You're getting on the line immediately. You're not burning one. The other option that they could have ran in that scenario would have been to go 5 wide and have Josh run it up the middle. Pick a hole, get your 250-pound ass in the end zone. That's the other thing. If you wanted Josh to take it, you want him to have the ball in his hands. I understand that. I get that. But what you did is you congested everything so much that even when they unpile everybody, it's going to take forever to get off of there. And the clock is still running, and you had to burn a timeout. I don't understand some of those things going on. Obviously, you want to feel confident. You had a pass interference call in the end zone. The ball's at the 1. You think you can get 1 yard with it. You don't. But you have to plan for those things. I have to use all these 3 timeouts now. I put myself in a corner. I have to use all 3 of them on defense after we score here.
Well,
and you did.
The part of me would disagree with you if the Bills hadn't run, the same formations to get Josh in the end zone earlier in the game. And he got stopped. So, part of me, had that not happened, right? Josh has been so efficient with that you do kind of bet you bet on the winning horse, right? Josh has been
Yeah.
so efficient at that
Yeah.
specific play that had the Rams not seen it yet, they prepared for it, right? But sometimes
Absolutely.
you prepare for it when you see it real time. It's not exactly what you thought it was. If the Bills hadn't run that play already, I would have said maybe you just put it in Josh's hands. With that being said, you drop Josh back in shotgun and give him 3 chances to pass the ball into the end zone or just run it in himself then. So what? That's 12, 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, are you if you're that worried about, Josh taking a sack in that scenario, then why did you run the ball?
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's the same thing. You're doing the same thing.
You literally bypassed the fact that you didn't have to use any of your timeouts. Even though you saved them for Josh,
right?
They got down there with 50 seconds, 40 seconds, the way that they were moving the ball. And you can't do that. That's almost as bad as taking a sack and getting knocked out of field goal range for a quarterback.
Right.
You're getting stopped there. And I understand you were successful with it all night. Why not run it again? Dance with who brung you, stuff like that. I would have liked to see it go 5 wide so that you can give the illusion that you're going to throw it.
Well, the Bills haven't given that look, right? Where they go 5 wide and then sneak. So that is that look that they've done.
They ran pass plays out of the 5 wide, but they didn't. Yeah, you're right. They didn't.
Right. We haven't seen the Josh sneak on 5 wide. With all of that being said, though, Mar, again, I have a slightly different complaint about the game management, and that is when you were down, the scores that you were down, right? So at one point in the game, you were down 31-14. To me, right? You score that next touchdown on the next drive. You're now we have to go for 2 land because you're down 3 scores. You're down 2 touchdowns and a field goal, right? So at some point, you got to start saying the possessions are going to get us here. We're going to have to start going for 2 sooner or later. And if you get 1, right, then it makes it easier to go for the next one. And now you could start saving yourself possessions. Now, granted, you need a lot of luck to go your way, right?
Oh,
and the refs did control quite a bit of this game. There were a couple penalties I didn't think were necessarily penalties. The horse collar on Josh, I was like, I don't really know if that's one. There was a pass interference that I thought should have been on Cooper. The guy had the back strap on Cooper. I was like, well, that probably should have been pass interference. It wasn't called. There were penalties that were and weren't called that were very questionable to me. And I think probably some for you come to mind as well, right? But I start looking at that saying we could very well lose control of this game because the refs have been in their pocket all game. So I'm willing to start having to cut off possessions. We're down 3 scores, right? You got to start saving possessions somewhere.
Yeah.
But McDermott is too damn conservative. He will never go for 2 in those scenarios, even though the numbers may tell you, hey, this is something you might want to consider, right? It'll never happen.
Yeah, he's he tends to err on the side of caution too much. It's like with Josh Allen, I had 2 different comparisons that I said with this. I said with Josh Allen, it's like having a Porsche 911 and you drive at 20 miles an hour all the time. Like, it's not meant to do that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I understand you had to go through a maturation process with Josh and in his years here and stuff like that. I understand that. And a lot of people like to compare Josh to Superman. The other thing that I say, McDermott right now is his kryptonite when it comes to game management. You want to think about the Buffalo Bills in 2024. They have 10 wins. 6 of those are blowouts. Take those right off the table. There's no game management in blowouts.
No.
There's no. You were able to get fortunate turnovers that allowed you to run up the score on those teams and play ahead, which is 90% of the teams in the NFL can play with leads like that big. And especially when you have that maniac on the other side of the ball and Allen, you can play with the lead all the time. He could just freewheel and deal out there.
Right.
It's unfortunate because we've seen 2 close games this year that the Bills have lost that they possibly could have won due to game management. Yep. And they were against 2 playoff bound teams. Now, chat, they didn't lose to a bad team tonight. Let's get that off the table right now. The Rams are a good team. They had injury bugs the entire year. That is why they're 7-6. But that is a scary team. Nobody wants to face them in the playoffs. Not one person wants to face that team in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you lost to a team where the quarterback went 23 for 30. They played a near perfect game offensively, and they had a block punt for a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
What else could Josh have done in that game, honestly?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely nothing. I mean, Matt Stafford walked away with 132.6 quarterback rating. That's crazy. You know what I mean? That's crazy. Stafford was so on point today. He made all the right reads. But again, against a team like that, you cannot play zone coverage the whole game because they're going to rub you to death. They're going to run those real quick rub routes and they're going to get out. They're easily find those holes in the zone and they're just going to move the football down the field on you. This was a bad matchup for Buffalo.
No.
And, this was not a game that Bills fans should have expected Buffalo to come in and just beat the hell out of him. Yeah. You hung 42 points on them because they've got a pretty poor secondary. That's right. You did that. The other side of that is they play a style of offense that's going to give you problems, like really big problems. And you saw that, they did what you should have expected them to do. Now, don't get me wrong, Puka Nacua was an absolute animal today. Cooper Kupp showing he's actually one of the best blocking wide receivers in the NFL, right?
100%.
Like Kupp was an animal today in the blocking game. And those things can't be overshadowed by how good Stafford was, and Stafford got him into all the right looks.
Yeah.
They played a gunslinger game. They're like, we are going to win this game. And I haven't seen a team really come after Buffalo like that all year, where they're like, we're just gonna win this game. We're just gonna keep taking shots, and we don't think you have it in you to beat us.
Yeah, you ran into a team who was hungry, and the Bills just wanted to eat. Mm-hmm. That's basically what happened to this game. The Bills had already clinched their playoff spot. They clinched their division, and you had a team in the Rams that needed this game. Mm-hmm. Bills just wanted this game. Near the end, they wanted it. They didn't really need it. How many times do we say all the time, Paul, it's an NFC game. Doesn't matter in the conference. Doesn't care. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm not that upset about it. I'm upset at how flat they came out.
I have to ask a question, right? So I see Oliver asked this question. Does our defensive genius head coach know that he's allowed to play double coverage on Nacua? I'm not sure he's aware of that. So with that being said, right, you lose Douglas, right, on the touchdown to Kupp. Yeah. Because Taylor Rapp, I'm pretty confident, broke his ribs. Broke Douglas's ribs. So much for that Guardian helmet, Yeah, right. That worked out great. It kept Rapp safe, right? But with that being said, on the routes that they run, you can't bracket that guy, right? Like you can't bracket Nacua because he doesn't really go deep. Those routes aren't deep enough. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? Is doubling a guy on those type of routes is almost impossible. You're giving up an awful lot to go over under on him and bracket him. So can you just explain a little bit what, when you talk about double coverage, right? You're not playing double man, right? No. Yeah. When you talk about bracket coverage in the simplest form of it is that you really want, you can go back to the Arizona game and how they played Marvin Harrison Jr. What the Buffalo Bills were able to do was they were content with James Conner beating them. Mm-hmm. They're like, okay, we don't think that you're going to be patient enough to run James Conner the entire game. You have this rookie, you have Kyler Murray, they're going to want to throw the ball. So what you do is you have a corner that plays on him, and you have a safety that plays over the top of him for those deep routes, and you bracket. You have a guy play underneath and a guy over top of him, and that's how you do it. That's how you bracket a receiver. With the routes that Nacua and Kupp typically run, they're intermediate routes. You can't really do that. Plus the fact of, imagine taking one of those safeties that you had in Hamlin or Rapp out of the run game to do that. Mm-hmm. With a seasoned quarterback that you have in Matt Stafford, Super Bowl winning quarterback, when he recognized what the Bills were in, he toasted you, and he recognized it quite a bit today. Right. You ended up having Taylor Rapp and DeMar Hamlin. They combined for 26 tackles today. Mm-hmm. Imagine taking one of them out, and Williams would have been able to run free
the entire game if you decided to just put Hamlin down in the box or put Rapp down in the box to bracket Nakua.
Right.
Okay, I'll go to Cup. Cup will have
Yeah.
17 catches today, and Kyron
Mhm.
Williams will run for 200 yards.
Yeah.
So the Bills did exactly are the best with what they could. A guy who I had a very unpopular opinion close to the end of the first quarter. What was wrong with Dorian Williams today? He couldn't have helped you at all?
I know.
Could he have not helped you? Matt Milano hasn't looked like Matt Milano in 2 weeks. And that's what happens when you have 427 days in between starts.
Yeah. Right.
He's not going to look like himself.
No, he looks caught up in the mud. He's getting
yes.
The guards get on him. He's not shedding a thing. Like it's not there yet. Right. So I'm glad to see him out there taking snaps, but there is a point where you look at it and say, we respect the work that you're doing. We need to take these snaps back right now. You know, I don't want to say that the Rams ran all over you, but I mean, Kyron Williams is a very good back, and he averaged 3 yards a carry today. So like Buffalo did what they were supposed to do in keeping the run game in control in a manner of speaking, right? Really, those jet sweeps, and we did it with Isaiah McKenzie a few years ago. Those jet sweeps change the way that defenders play the edge on you, and that is what makes that offense so good. Is they control from sideline to sideline, right? Like they use that entire field. They control sideline to sideline because they do those jet motion sweeps and they utilize them as part of their offense. You saw that with Epinesa down at the goal line. He just got caught up because again, they'd run a few jet sweeps. They run Puka Nacua on a same jet sweep that scores later. Like it impacts the way defenders attack a play because it's always in the back of their mind. Like I need to be very aware that this is a very likely possibility, right?
Which opens up the off tackle for the running back.
That's
he tries to
exactly
go
right.
too wide.
Right. And I think the Epinesa, the Kyron Williams touchdown, the first one is an example of how a jet sweep impacts the defenders because Epinesa was there, but he wasn't. Right.
Yeah. He was caught in no man's land, as they call it. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. You talk about him having three.
Okay. Well, and hold on. And with that being said, on the other side of the ball, James Cook ran the ball 6 times today. Like they got you out of your game. They knew you were going to pass the ball, and you still lost by 2, combining for 86 points tonight. Like that's crazy. If that's not an MVP performance, then one doesn't exist. Right? They knew you were going to throw the ball. They still couldn't stop you. I understand they're not a great pass defense, but the fact of the matter is, Josh, absolutely MVP level performance. If he wins the MVP, this is the game that minding the playoffs, right? Excusing anything that happens in the playoffs in the regular season, people are going to come back and say, that's an MVP performance. He did absolutely everything to win that game for his team.
Put the team on his back.
Yeah, right.
Greg Jennings style.
Yes.
Yeah. It's so hard to think about like some of the things that, what's going on with this interior defensive line. And the other thing about Milano, I just want to touch on really quick was the fact that you and I have been very, very cautious and wanted to mention to many Bills Mafia and #Nation the fact that, Milano wasn't a great run stopper when he was there. Mm-hmm. Sideline to sideline, he's probably in the top 10 of linebackers in the NFL. Like you can't get to the sideline on Milano. Like he's just too fast. He's just too quick. But running between the tackles, he tends to get sticky on guards. And he's proven that even in his all pro year, he got sticky on guards. What made him get into the Pro Bowl or the All Pro was the fact that he was able to cover, and he's a great coverage linebacker and some of the things he was able to do. When the Buffalo Bills when the Rams were in obvious passing downs, which would be Milano's strength, I saw Cam Lewis in there for him, not him.
Yep.
They went to dime, obviously, because they usually run mostly nickel. What does that tell you? I mean, when Taron Johnson is your best linebacker getting into the backfield, I mean Bernard's good too. I mean, I don't mean to misspeak by that way, but Milano's having trouble. And I think someone said, I want to give Milano a pass because he just came back from injury. I understand that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh my
Ryan
God,
with a
Ryan. Is
great
that a
stat.
is that a
Teams,
real
yeah,
stat?
that's a real stat. Yeah.
Teams who
Teams who
score
score
6 touchdowns.
16, yeah, have 0 giveaways. We're 245 and
Wow.
0 coming in today. Again, no turnovers today, right? And that's something, Mar, you and I have talked about quite a bit, is the turnover ratio for Buffalo
Mhm.
makes the blowout games a bit deceiving, because they've been on the very, very, very plus side of turnovers. And when you're not generating them and you're not generating, uh, tackles for loss, I think people have a tendency to look at sacks and forget that they're tackles for loss, right? Um, when you're not generating tackles for loss, what happened to this defense? Like,
Yeah.
you
I
got
mean,
to generate negative plays in the backfield.
in
You
the second
have to.
half they did. In the second half they had a few more than they did in the first half, but the problem was it wasn't sustainable. You got them into uh advantageous situations as far as your defense goes, but then when you're giving up, it's a 3rd and 8 and you give up the first down.
Mhm.
I called the defense. What the heck happened? What's going on here? I think a lot of the early flags that were on Douglas and or Benford uh, changed their play style a little bit. I mean, because they're used to being aggressive corners. And the fact
Yeah.
is, when you get those called on you, unless you want them called on you all game, you have to change up your style a little bit. And it completely opened up the offense for Stafford and Nakua and Cup. And that's
Mhm.
pretty much really all he was going to. He went to
Right.
Robinson early, but then he got hurt, diving for that one pass. But some of the calls that, we could go back and forth on the calls. I really don't want to harp too much on the calls for today. Like that obvious false start on that 4th and 5. You talked about
Yeah.
grabbing Cooper's nameplate. Some of the other ones are like ticky tacky. It's like, why are you calling that? It doesn't even make any sense. The nameplate on Josh. Why are you calling that?
Yeah.
He scraped his nameplate. Like he didn't really pull him back, and
Mhm.
but a lot of that stuff being considered, I think this game came down to McDermott and his management of the game. I think that
Yeah.
was as bad as it was. You faced a team that needed to win and
Mhm.
wanted to win so badly that they were going to throw everything that they had at you.
Yeah.
And you still had an opportunity, even with a block punt touchdown, to win the
Mhm.
game. And you
Yeah.
mismanaged the clock.
Yep. Well, and Mar, let's not, give the Rams credit where credit's due there, because they were 11 for 15 on 3rd downs. Like the
Yeah,
conversion rate is really high. That's 11
that
for
is
15.
huge.
You win
That's
most of those.
ridiculous.
You win most of those
The
games.
fact that you get 11, that you get a team in 15 third downs means they have the ball
Yeah.
forever. And they
Mhm.
did. They had the ball for what, 38 minutes today? What was the
Yeah, they had it for, I'll give you the time.
38-30?
Yeah, 38
They
minutes.
ran
Buffalo.
18 more offensive plays than you, Paul, and won
Mhm.
by 2.
Yep.
It's because you had 17 out there. 17's not out there. This game is a rout,
Mhm.
an absolute rout.
Yeah.
I mean, he had some throws that were questionable. You're on the run and you're trying to throw it to the left sideline.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
running.
The middle looked wide open,
Yeah,
right?
when you're
Was that Josh protecting those timeouts again? Like, is that what that is? Because it
he
looked
could
like
have been
he could run
tired.
forever.
He could have been not Anthony Richardson. Like, I'm tired. I'm going to tap myself out. No, but it could have been one of those scenarios where he was running and he saw a guy open that would have preserved some time. So he tried throwing it. But when you're running as a quarterback, you and I both know when you throw a football and your elbows down, that bad boy's going to sail. And especially if
Mhm.
you're on the run, it's going to float. So you have to
Mhm.
account for that. And Allen has the arm strength to account for that. The problem was he was already running and then made the decision to throw it when his elbow was down. You don't get to free set. Hold on, guys, let me set up and
Right.
throw this. So he
Right.
threw it out to the left to Ty Johnson and it just went high. But
Mhm.
yeah, it was just some of those. What I hope the Buffalo Bills take from this game, number one, is I hope that they use a little bit more of those comeback routes where if there's a man coverage and Josh knows it's in man coverage, throwing it to a spot where the receiver has to come back and get it and the defender has no choice but to commit pass interference.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
I know
you
some
got away
teams
with
that do
one with
that.
Shakir there, right near the end of the
Mm-hmm.
game. I mean, you were in trouble there. Like
Mm-hmm.
you were in big, 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 big trouble.
Miguel,
Speaking of
that was a pick
what was
play.
that?
No,
Yeah.
Miguel says, how is that not a pick play there towards the end?
Yeah.
Cup was already blocking before Nakua had the ball. That should have been a
Right.
pick
Ball
play.
was already in the air. Ball was already in the air. But yeah, that's what it's so bang bang that it just does it that never gets called. Like it's never gonna get called. You can't depend on that call ever to happen. It'll just never happen.
Hey there, guy.
Oh, hey guys.
Oh, what's up? It's Captain Sunshine himself. How you doing, Rye?
Good,
Everyone,
how we doing?
everyone, hop on the Fire McDermott train.
I'm saving everyone's seats. Is everybody ready? Is everybody jumping on yet? Are we picking up what I've been putting down for the last 4 years?
I'm waiting for it. Let's
Yeah.
go. Let me hear it.
Yeah.
He did it again. I mean, your coach did it again, man. Like, you have an otherworldly performance from your quarterback, the first quarterback at player ever, 3 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
And you can't even let him end the game with the ball in his hands. Like, it's awful. It's absolutely awful. It can, like, it's like, he can't keep getting away with this, right? Like, how many times is he going to get away with this before people are like, you know, and listen, there's nothing wrong with being a coach that you bring in for culture and that you bring in to kind of turn a franchise around who's struggled with losing. Like, McDermott, go back to Carolina, right? Like, Carolina would love a coach like Sean McDermott to right the ship and get him back on the winning track. But some coaches just aren't good enough to get over the hump. And maybe he's John Fox. Maybe he's Marvin Lewis. Like, maybe he's one of those guys that just, he's good enough to turn a franchise around. He's good enough to get you to the playoffs. He's good enough to win a bad division. And maybe that's it.
Jeff Fisher,
right? Like, I mean, Jeff Fisher at least got to a Super Bowl, right? Like,
he did.
McDermott hasn't even done that yet. McDermott hasn't even been to an AFC Championship game yet. Like, what are we talking about with this guy where he's so defended by everybody in you know, Bills Mafia?
He went to one. Didn't they go to one?
Went to an AFC Championship game.
Okay, well, 13 seconds was the AFC title game, right?
No, that was a divisional. It was the 2 years prior to that when they got blown out, I think. I thought they got blown out early in Josh's career in the AFC Championship game. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Chat.
Yeah,
Fact check me on
13
that.
seconds was 13 seconds. I'm pretty sure was good retrospectively. Yeah.
So I have to ask, because Mario and I were debating this a little earlier. You preserve the 3 timeouts. You let the Rams go down to 2 minutes, right? I feel like you're kind of trying to take your shot there, right? You're trying to preserve time in that possession, not the possession after the next possession, right? Which is when you're saving timeouts past 2 minutes, that's what you're doing, is you're trying to save time that's already gone, right? Like what are you doing? I got a little frustrated that, you know, with 4 minutes left on the clock, right? You're not trying to stop that drive, right? Because once the team starts calling timeouts, that does change the way other teams or an offensive team would call plays. But McDermott doesn't put that pressure on them. And, you know, they let the clock go down to 2 minutes. Like, I was frustrated at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird to me because he clearly at that point in the game, and you know, Mario, correct me if I'm wrong, like he's signaling that the timeouts are important, right? Like to not call a timeout ahead of the 2 minute warning. His thought process is, I want 3 timeouts when my quarterback has the ball back in his hands, right? To try and get this back. And as soon as you give up the touchdown to Nakua, it's, you know, okay, now timeouts become critical because now I got to get 2 possessions out of this thing.
Right.
So if the timeouts are important there, then why aren't they important when it's 1st and goal from the 1 and Josh gets stuffed? Like, wouldn't 10 seconds coming off the clock to hurry up back to the line and run that same play again or run something else again, isn't that more valuable than the timeout, or less valuable than the timeout?
Yeah.
Right. Aren't you spiking the ball? Right. Like at that point, it's going to cost you 15 seconds to get everybody back on the line and spike the ball. Or you even run the risk that they could call an intentional delay game penalty on the defense for laying on your offensive players. That's definitely still in play. You gave up the game by calling a timeout there. And in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that guaranteed that there was not a way for you to get the ball back with any legitimate chance at winning the game, right? Like, if you get the ball back there, it's with 3 seconds left, 2 seconds left at most. And you know, and it's just, I wonder, because we hear all about the analytics about the goal to go or the fourth and go or punt situations. Like he's got somebody supposedly team of people in his ear when it comes to the analytics stuff. Like what's the analytics on the timeouts there? What's the analytics on accepting or declining the fourth down or the penalty? The holding call that would have been a 4th and 7 instead turns into a 4th and 3, and they get however many yards. Like how many? Like, what are they running the analytics on? And obviously, we're not going to get an answer on that. But I'm curious. Like, and I don't know if anybody's done the legwork on it. Like, what is the analytics between declining or, because Mario, if you're calling an offense, right, and it's 4th and 7 from your own from the other team's, like what would it have been, like 40 or 37-yard line, right? So it's a 54-yard field goal,
very makeable.
Or you go for it on
6.
4th and 7. Like if you're McVay, you're go inside of 4th and 5, right? But if beyond 4th and 5, are you still go, or do you punt it, leave it to your defense? Do you try to kick the field goal? Like that's decision point. Decision point for me wasn't, okay, now we picked up 14 on 3rd down and now it's 4th and 4. Like that's an easy decision. That's go, right? Inside of you're up. So,
well, I went over it a little bit earlier. I think you were putting the minion down, Ryan. I said that if number one, there's no analytics on calling a timeout at the goal line because you should have used them already. You should have used them. Yeah. It was I already went over it. There was 4:40 left. The holding call happened. If it was anything less than 4th and 5, you have to accept that penalty. There's no question. You have to accept the penalty. But it was going to be 4th and 7, a little bit tougher to get. You know what I mean? And you were dealing with a coach that was being super aggressive because he knows his team is in the hunt for the playoffs, has to try to win the division. He's going to go for it. You have to try to read the room at that scenario because analytics can only take you so far. You don't take that penalty. You let them go. You put the pressure back on McVay because then if he does not get it, he's questioning. People are questioning him in the media for his coaching decisions and not yours. So you put it on him to either burn a timeout or he has to go for it on 4th and 7 or he has to kick a field goal. Put that on him.
Right.
Don't give him 2 plays to come back at you when he's been moving the ball on you all day. And then you play a soft zone behind it and give him 12 yards. I don't understand. If you're going to do that, if you're going to say, okay, we're going to accept the penalty, jam his receivers at the line so they can't go anywhere, upset their timing, do something in that effect. And as far as the down and distance down there, I said earlier, I would have ran a 5 wide. If you want Josh to run it up the middle from the 1, spread them out.
Run a quarterback draw.
Yeah, something like that. Sure. And Paul was like, he gave a great counterpoint was the fact that you were running that play all day and being successful with it. Why don't you think it would work with 1 yard to go?
Yeah,
because
I think
the risk and reward was not good there.
Right. I mean, I think the statistics on it are like they've been like 93% successful with the quarterback sneak. Right. Like, I don't have an issue necessarily with the call itself. I think. And Mario, you're right. Like statistically, one of the analytics because they've already used those timeouts, right? Like,
yeah.
But if he doesn't use the timeout there, and they run 10 seconds off, and then they punch it in, and then he's got 3 timeouts, and he gets the ball in Josh Allen's hands back with 47 seconds left, he looks like a genius. If they go down the field and kick a field goal, or they go down the field and win the football game, so.
Right.
It's like it's just maddening that the line is so thin, and here we are. Once again, a game that will, be on NFL honors at the end of the season that they talk about as game of the year, and the Bills are again on the losing end of things, right? Like this will be like the 5th year in a row, right? Like Hail Murray and 13 seconds and like time and time again. It's like the best game of the year. The Bills are in it, and the Bills always wind up losing. And you can always point back to like there's the one thing that McDermott did or didn't do in adjusting his defense at halftime, like. That points to how that listen, you've got a centaur unicorn hybrid at quarterback, and you're watching these performances, all-time record-breaking, never to be duplicated performances get flushed down the drain season after season, week after week, year after year. And it's like for everybody that in the chat, because I deal with them in my family, I deal with them in group chats, I deal with them on Twitter, who all say, well, who would it be? Like, who's the guy you bring in? What's the alternative to McDermott? I don't know. But by the time you decide that this guy's not it and you cut losses on it, you better hope that Josh isn't on the wrong side of 30 and declining in his play, because then you're starting all over. Then you don't even have a quarterback. Right now, the Buffalo Bills would be the premier destination for any head coaching candidate out there. So if you want to ask who, pick, right? Like, I don't know, Kyle Shanahan. Like, go get him. Go trade for him. They've mentioned at the press conference today for him. Like, trade for Kyle Shanahan at this point. I don't care. Just something. Like, if it's not working, stop slamming your head against the wall. Turn around, realize you've got a quarterback, you've got a solid defense, you've got, two coordinators in place that know how to use their pieces, and just go get a guy that has to manage the game. Like, insert name here. I don't care at this point.
Word of note, if John Lynch calls you about a trade, you hang up the phone. I just want to point that out. If John Lynch calls you about a trade for the San Francisco 49ers, you hang up the phone right away. You do not accept that phone call. With that being said, I understand that Josh has been highly efficient in that goal line scenario. Again, the 93% that's pretty close to accurate if that's a number from the hip. If you're just trying to remember what that number is, it sounds pretty close to accurate. But how Josh is just as dangerous taking that ball from shotgun.
Sure.
He ran for 82 yards today, on 10 carries. Like, you give him space. You don't give him space there, right?
Well, and you create the danger of something else, right? Like, it's chaos Josh. 4th and 1, or goal to go in shotgun. Like that. That's
down
chaos
2
formation.
Scores.
Right.
You're down 2 scores. Who cares?
Right.
Who cares? You're down 2 scores. You treated these timeouts like gold, and now you're gonna blow it because you decide to put all your eggs in the Josh Allen quarterback sneak basket. I let Josh throw the football. I let him run around. I let him waste 20 seconds running 3 plays from the goal line. And then
it felt like
if it comes down to 4th down, then you try the QB sneak, right?
Yep.
Like the guy was able to buy time all day today. He was not going to have a problem doing it on the goal line. And I just get so frustrated.
It reeks
believing that the quarterback sneak was just the only answer. It wasn't.
Yeah. It reeks of panic. That timeout being used in that moment reeks of panic to me. McDermott had the pressure on. He looked at the clock. He knows his defense is going to get shredded if, whatever. Like, timeout. Because it's almost like maybe he didn't know what else to do in that situation.
Well, there was a minute 10, I think.
And maybe some of that falls. Maybe some of that falls on I almost called him Dorsey. On Brady, right? Like, you got to get 2 plays in. You got to tell McDermott, like, we're going back to back, right? Like, some of that has to fall on the coordinator. I get that, but at the end of the day, there's one guy that calls the timeouts, and unfortunately, when you're the head coach, that's going to fall on you, right? Like, Brady can't call the timeout. He's, there's not enough time between things happening where he's going to radio down and say, Sean, call a timeout. I don't know what to do here, because you just did the same exact thing back to back. So just run it back, right? Like, Sean, we're going to sneak it. If we don't get it, we're going to sneak it again. Like, just tell the guys to get up and get back in the, it's just maddening.
That is one of those things that when you're walking down there, you say that in Josh's helmet. You have to tell him that. You're like, listen, we're going to go. If there's by some reason we don't get it, and you don't want to put that in your quarterback's head. I understand that, but you got to get up and get on the ball. We have to save these timeouts for the defense now. We were fortunate enough to get down there and not need any of them. Right. We're down at the 1. We got a pass interference call. You guys know when a penalty happens, you got a little bit of a lull. He could be in his helmet. You're like, listen, we're going to go back to back, get on the ball as fast as you can if you don't get the first time. This is what we're doing. You're going to get it twice in a row. They're not going to stop you twice in a row. Get up, get in there, and then it probably would have been 50 seconds left, 40 at the least, but you had all 3. It didn't matter at that point. If you have all 3, you could stop the clock even if they try to run it.
I mean, the reality is you get inside the 10-yard line, you're not kicking a field goal. That's your shot, right? You're not kicking a field goal if you're inside the 10-yard line. Oh, my God.
Can you imagine if he kicked it and then tried to kick off and use the timeouts?
What do they call that? The field goal of death, right?
That's right.
That is one of the, in one of the analytics. You're down there, kick it immediately.
Preserve as much time as possible.
Call your timeouts, and then you got to go get 7.
Right.
But here's the thing, guys. It's almost a moot point for a lot of the people watching this, and they may be listening to this tomorrow. Were they even stopping them at all? Were they even going to stop them? They stopped them twice. Yeah. Right. And it was the last one when they wanted to be stopped.
Yeah, I get it, right? We're arguing over using the timeouts when they scored 44 points today.
Yeah,
like,
and who's to say if you have a
odds are-
timeout in the pocket, who's to say that McVay's not going to try to throw it on third down, right? And just
That's
Oh, he
right.
would. Yeah.
you know, I mean, who's to say he's not going to run misdirection? He's not going to run that Puka, jet sweep again one more time. And I mean, I don't know. I'm reading through the chat. Like, there's a debate going on, like, about Josh's interceptions and how long McDermott covered for Josh's interceptions. Like, Josh has stopped turning the ball over, right? Like, Josh's game has evolved. Josh's game has turned into. So my question is, when are you going to ask the coach to evolve? Like, when is it going to be? Well, he covered for Josh for the last, for the 5 seasons when he was turning the ball over 20 times a season. Cool. Josh isn't doing that anymore. So when's it on the head coach to adapt? When's it on him to be better in these tight situations?
Yeah, and Ryan, Sean Rogers, Mr. Rogers Homes, by the way, it's Sean Rogers. Mr. Rogers Homes, our sponsor here at Hashtag Sports. Make sure you go check out Mr. Rogers Homes YouTube channel, and they actually have an app now to get connected to all real estate in Arizona. Now, with all that being said, I want to point out he in a comment said, "Where is there a coach for the coach?" Right? Like, we talk about head coaching. That's the cool kids club, but that is not a support group. Right? Like, you go and you flame out or you're successful. It is not a support group. Mm-hmm. Other head coaches are not there to help you alter the way that you manage a game. They may be there to help you deal with the personalities and all the nonsense that you have to deal with that's off the field. But as far as on the field stuff, those head coaches, you're on your own. That's it. So if this is the way you choose to manage a game, then you're going to learn by fire. That's going to be what happens.
And look, McDermott may, whatever, right? Like, McDermott may get fired and go somewhere else and, win somewhere else, right? Like, worked for Andy Reid. Like, he had to get fired in Philadelphia after a few seasons straight of success and just not being able to get over the hump before he finally went to Kansas City. And then he fell into a generational quarterback and he went out and won a bunch of rings. Like, I'm not saying that McDermott can't. I'm just saying that there's no evidence over the last however many seasons that he's going to get better. Right? Like, I saw somebody on Twitter say, well, we hope that Josh can learn, or that Sean can learn from his mistakes from this game, and he can be better next time. Based on what? Like, he hasn't learned. Like, he's made this mistake time in and time out, and over and over and over again. Right? Like, he's not
in time out. I know what you did there.
Yeah, they see that. Yeah, but I mean, sure. Like, this season, he's gotten better with his timeouts. Right? Like, Mario, we've even talked about it in the chat. Like, he's been better with his timeouts. But this is the first close game that they've been in, down in crunch time, where he's got to make legitimate decisions about his timeouts, and he fumbles, right? He pisses all over his leg. Like,
literally, chat, I just want to let you guys know, because we watch the game at different times because we have tape delays and stuff like this. Immediately when that holding call happened, Ryan, you put in the chat, you got to decline this, right?
Yeah.
Immediately. Now, Ryan and I call games for Brockport. We've seen a lot of time management things that go on at the college Division III level that make more sense than what McDermott does. But the fact that a season ticket holder and a washed up quarterback from Division III could know that you're supposed to decline that freaking penalty and put it back on him says a lot about a professional coach. If he doesn't know it by now, who's going to teach him? You mentioned Reid. You know why Reid got fired? Because of his clock management.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's fair.
What McDermott learned from.
Right.
What are we doing?
Right. Reid couldn't win when T.O. went out for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns on a broken leg. They were like, I guess this guy's capped out, right? Like, what more can we do for him?
Oh, my God.
And the argument that if you decline the penalty, you push them out of field goal range, because if they kick the field goal, they go up 6. You haven't attempted a field goal all game.
Right.
You haven't attempted a field goal all game.
And not long after that, they go in for the touchdown and their kicker slips, right? Like, weird things happen all the time. But even if you're down 6, even if you're down 6, the way that Josh had been playing, that Josh had been playing, if I'm down 8 or less, I'm feeling very good about my chances because Josh was in sicko mode at that point.
So, how long was the field goal they declined? We said it was like 54. Is that right?
I think it would have. I think
around
they had it at 37. So it would have been
like that.
Yeah, it would have been about the 54, about a 54 yarder.
But again,
but to Mario's point, it forces a timeout, right? Like, McVay probably calls a timeout there in that situation because he has to think about it. Because
let's say he runs down the clock. Let's just say, argument's sake, he runs down the clock. but it was a penalty, so it stopped it at 440. He has to run a play. If he decides to kick the field goal, you have 3 timeouts, Josh Allen down 6 with 4:20 left. I'd take that every day of the week, in the way, especially how he was playing today. Give me that all day. I'll run my 4-minute offense. I'll chew up some clock. Maybe I'll run a couple to James Cook. I will put so much pressure on that defense and then run the clock out so that finally, for once, Josh Allen walks off the field with a lead and the game over, instead of trying to put it in your defense's hands, who you seem to trust more than Josh Allen at this point, which I don't know why. I don't understand why. You had 44 points hung on you, and you want to trust your defense. I don't understand that.
Right. It's kind of like it's kind of like just going to college, right? Like the questions that came out about Miami last week against Syracuse when they were down and Mario Cristobal elected to kick a field goal instead of put the ball in Cam Ward's hands, right? Like why do you trust your defense more than your Heisman candidate quarterback? Like, why is that a thing? And for Sean McDermott, it's like, why aren't you willing to give Josh the ball back down 6 with a chance to win it? I'd rather lose on a 4th and 14 with the ball in Josh Allen's hands than lose it with the ball in the air from a punt and by hitting in the end zone at 0. It's just you've got to chain, you got to, what is it? You got to dance with who brung you. And 6 touchdowns to that point, Josh brought you, right? Like, you got to put the ball in his hands. You got to make sure whatever you do, you have to make sure he ends the game, right, wrong, or indifferent, with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, Bills fan 21 brings up because I don't think it was wrong to accept it. They went for it on 4th down anyway and got it. It would have been 4th and 7 instead of 4th and 5. Defense needs to be better there. I understand defense needs to be better there. What I mentioned that in 3rd and 17, they were playing off 7 yards of everything. Right. Mm-hmm. You need to jam and upset the routes of the receivers just so they can't get half of it back. Mm-hmm. So
exactly. The defensive play call on 3rd down was a joke.
Because you throw it to a backup tight end who gets 12 yards. Come on.
That was a joke.
Come on now, guys.
Yeah, why accept the penalty if you're going to let them take the yards back? Right?
Yeah, I don't understand that.
It doesn't make any sense.
They weren't going deep.
And with that being said, 4th and 7 versus 4th and 5, not necessarily the same play call.
Oh, very different.
Yeah, no.
Very that's what I mean.
You're not running a drag to Tutu Atwell on 4th and 7.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's not the thing.
To Bills fan 21, that's the counter argument to me, right? Is 4th and 7, 4th and 5, they're not the same play call. So yes, did they get it on 4th and 5? Yeah, you're right, they did. The counter argument though is that 4th and 7 is a lot different. The play call probably is different.
Yeah, and again, we go back to what Mario said, right? It's not just the play call, it's the pressure on it, right? Like inside, if it's 4th and 5 or less, you're automatic go if you're McVay, because that's the mindset he has, right? If it's 4th and more than 5, you have to think about it. You have to think about kicking the field goal. You have to think about punting. You have to think about, do I go for it? All of that turns into, okay, 10 seconds, 12 seconds off the clock. I've made my decision. Now what's my play call, right? Like, you don't have it in your pocket to say, inside of 4th and 5, here's my play, right? Like, my best play inside of 4th and 5. You don't have a best play for 4th and 7. You've got like a myriad of plays that you can pick from. It's just, it would have been the opportunity to shift for the first time all game the pressure to the other sideline for McDermott.
Well, so I just had this thought occur to me, right? Do you accept the penalty there because you haven't been able to pressure Stafford all game? Right? Is that simulating a sack? Like, just imagine that for a moment, right? Is that the thought process? Because you're, again, defensive head coach. Right? You haven't been able to generate any pass rush, any meaningful pass rush for most of the game. You accept the penalty to bump them back. Now they've got a huge 3rd down. Yes, they take yardage back, but does McDermott look at it and say, well, we've just basically sacked him on 2nd down? Like, okay,
yeah, I think his thought process is more it knocks him out of field goal range. I have difficulty believing that McDermott in those situations can think deeper than, they're not in field goal range, now let my defense go make a play, right? Like, it's just...
Translation, Ryan says that he's playing checkers, not chess.
I mean, he might be playing on a chessboard, but I don't think he's playing chess.
Because if you look at that, Paul, I like the thought process that, okay, we got a sack on 2nd down, it's 3rd and 17, now can we do that? But why do you play such a soft coverage the next down? You they're in 2-down territory. If they get any of this back, are you're not worried. You're not thinking so far as you're worried about a pass interference call if you want to jam them because they're going to hold them. You're not worried really about a big play because if they score on a big play,
They don't want to score on a big play, right?
but the
They want
point
to use
was
time.
there was 4 minutes left, so they're calling all underneath stuff.
Yeah.
So even if you want to accept that penalty, let's say that's the thing, call a different defensive set, do something different. Put Milano on an A-gap blitz, get something in Stafford's face so he can't just go over the middle.
And I think that's the other thing too, Paul. I think there's again the mental aspect of it, right? Like if you sacked him on second down, that would have been your first sack all game. There's a mental aspect that comes into that, right? For Stafford, like now it's in the back of his head. They got to me once. Can they get to me on back to back? Maybe I overanalyze. Somebody coming off a fake blitz, or someone's coming off the edge and they flip and then comes an A-gap blitz. Whatever. Like there's a lot that goes into that. It's just again, I think Sean just gets outclassed in situations where it comes down to the, as Mario calls it, the game within the game, right? Mm-hmm. And it will be difficult for me to point back to a situation where McDermott has won the game within the game. I can't remember if he has or not.
Where he outcoached somebody?
Where you looked at it and you went, man, like Sean got that guy, right? Like maybe the McDaniel games, but I mean, who really cares, right? It's the Dolphins. Like,
I mean, you could think about it in a sense where majority of the year, his second half adjustments are crucial and critical, and he's been doing wonderful with that. But like you just said, Ryan, I know that's not what you're talking about, but what you're talking about is the game within the game, making adjustments where you have to think 2 or 3 steps ahead of the guy that's across from the sideline. Yeah, exactly. It just seems like he falls a little bit short with that. His game management just worries me a little bit. And, I tweeted out a little bit earlier. I was like, earlier this week, I said, I've never been on the fire McDermott train. That's been something that's been captained by Ryan since 13 seconds. And he'll tell you, we have documented proof. True. It's since 13 seconds he's wanted McDermott gone. But the point is, with that, I'm like, listen, guys, maybe we should just temper our expectations. Everyone's high on the Bills now. They're 10-2. They've scored 30 points in 6 straight games. Blah blah blah. All this other stuff. 6 of those games were blowouts, guys. Mm-hmm. You don't need game management when you're blowing out a team. You don't need to practice your game management. And the 2 games that we really needed his game management and to do something about it, they lost to Houston. They lost to LA.
Yeah, I mean, Mario, we talked about it. I mean, we were in the group chat at halftime, right? Like. Talking about this game, like this is not an indictment on this team. I said it in the group chat. This is not an indictment on this team, right? Mm-mm. They're on the road against a team who needs the win to stay in the playoff hunt. You've got Detroit next week. Like this isn't a surprise that this is a letdown game. Yeah. To go from that to how they lost that game is the problem, right? Like if you would have told me at the beginning of the season that they were going to go on the road against the Rams and lose, cool. Okay. Like, that's fine. That makes sense to me, right? Like this is a good offense. McVay's a good coach, and then you told me it was coming off of the back of clinching the division this early in the season. It all makes sense. But then when you add in the way it happened, it's again a situation that has repeated itself and reared its ugly head, and it's just another thing for Bills fans to keep in their minds as playoffs approach. That this head coach, is he hampering this team? Like at some point you have to. He's gotten rid of coordinators, right? Like he's done that song and dance. Like you've gone out and you've gotten better players at key positions. You've shored up the offensive line. You've gotten wide receivers when you need wide receivers. You've got a quarterback who's putting on historic performances, and then you're still losing football games. I think Bills fans are shifting from we saw so much bad for so long that there's the fear that you're going to go back to that. Right. If you get rid of the guy who pulled you out of the doldrums and pulled you out of the swamp and and brought you to what's perceived as a better place in the NFL, but how much of that is Sean, right? Or how much of that is just you've got an amazing guy at quarterback, you've got a good defense, there's other guys out there who can lead this team, and people who keep saying who, I don't know, it's not my job, right? Like my job is not to find who the next coach is. But, somebody should be able to go out and find a head coach that can maximize their talents. And I just think he's past the point where he's maximizing talent. Now the question is he holding that talent back? Because this is a far superior team talent-wise than we've seen over the last, 8 years of him being a head coach. This is probably the most talented team he's had. So at what point do we question whether he's truly maximizing talent, or is he capping a ceiling for them?
Well, and this is also the first year where we've seen Buffalo have to invest in unprepared players at the NFL level, right? And have to give them serious playing time. So, like, you saw it when Milano went down last year, right? And what did we see? We saw them kind of drift towards veterans who were familiar, right? Like, that
AJ
was
Klein,
sort of
right?
the move.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, you kind of drift towards veterans that were familiar because can't play Dorian Williams, right? Can't do that. That's no good for us. Like, oh wait, hold on, we can't play Dodson. Like, oh wait, hold on, we can't do that. Like this is the first year where they've had to commit to those types of players and expect playing time from them. So there's going to be games that you get blown wide open on because there's a huge learning curve for those players. But I still just struggle to understand how Dorian Williams can't get on the field in a game.
I can't. Yeah, I can't either.
I cannot fathom it. And I'm not saying Dorian Williams is amazing, right? But he is above league average as a run defender.
He was 12th in the league in tackles when Milano came back, and you're telling me he can't get on the field for this team that just gave up how many yards and and they were 11 for 13 on third down before those last 2 drives. Like, what are we talking about? This guy can't get on the field.
He at least gives you a different dynamic that Stafford has to consider when calling off plays, right? So it's at least a different dynamic, and everybody knows what Milano looks like, right? You've got years of tape on Milano. You know exactly his role. You know exactly how he fits in. But Dorian Williams' role has changed since the beginning of the season. And now with Milano back, he can't get on the field. Like, come on. McDermott has a tendency to believe in his players to a point of failure. And that's where I get frustrated with him is, this propensity to lean towards veterans, to lead towards, championship caliber players, when you have capable players who deserve the opportunity to at least fail you. Right? Like, Dorian Williams goes out there and blows a coverage, and the Rams score. They scored 44 points today. You're telling me Milano was perfect in coverage? Like, come on.
Yeah. I mean, at a certain point, guys have earned the right to make a mistake. Right?
Yeah,
like Josh has earned the right to go out and lose the football game with a bad interception at the end of the game because he just put up an absolute monster performance. Dorian Williams, up until this point, he's been playing well enough to where Bills fans weren't saying, I can't wait for Milano to come back for any other reason than they just missed Milano, right? Like, Milano's a good player. He's really good. But you can't tell me that this version of Milano is a marked improvement on Dorian Williams. Like, you could make an argument that he's not an improvement over Dorian Williams and that Dorian Williams deserves to be playing over him right now. Like, this Milano just looks off. But, I know, Mario, you've said that for, the last 2 weeks. You've questioned whether Milano should be on the field as much as he is. Like,
no, I think they should have brought him back in packages, certain packages. Not 100%, but he likes to play his linebackers 100%. He likes to play Bernard 100%. He likes to play his other.
Yeah, he's a big game flow guy.
Yeah, and it's weird. Matt Milano's 3rd on the team in salary. I wonder if that has anything to do with it, Paul.
Don't ask me that loaded question.
Two more. He's got 2 more years of his deal, and he's got a voided year built in. So
and he's 30. Right? Like,
maybe they're just trying to milk the last bit of football out of him. And they're trying to get him ready for the playoffs, and they're hoping that 5 weeks and Sam Laporta can help him do that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like do it with the Jets and the Patriots, right? Like,
that's where my thought was too, right?
Yeah.
You're going against a Detroit team that could do the same thing to you going into half that the Rams did to you today. That Detroit team scores a lot of points in the first half of football games. They score a lot. And it could be another game where you see 37-41, right? Like, you could see another huge scoring game because Detroit, they're not going to plan on stopping Buffalo. They're just going to plan on outscoring them.
And with the success on the ground today that the Rams saw, like, I mean, was it the right decision to pull Jordan Phillips out of the lineup, who had been playing well in that rotation? Like, all of it, like, same thing, right? Dwayne Carter comes back, and he's immediately back into the starting lineup, getting a full rotation, and you make Phillips inactive.
Yeah.
I keep saying it, right? Like, you mean to tell me that Reggie Gilliam really needs to be on the roster, on the game day roster, that you couldn't have carried an extra defensive tackle for a guy who's earned some playing time over the last 3 weeks that he's been here?
Yeah, Jordan Phillips looked disruptive, and I think you would have begged for that today.
Yeah.
You know, and of course Jordan Phillips does typical Jordan Phillips things. He gets pushed on gaps he should maintain,
Yep.
but there's also times where he absolutely blows up plays. So,
And I think there's something to be said for his energy on the sideline too. I mean, he's
Right.
He's a guy who's he's always hyping the fans up, and he's always doing the get louder thing, and he's the first one out on the field that the first defender out on the field to congratulate the offense on big plays. Like, there's something to be said for that, and I just there's a lot of
Spoken like a
questions.
true Shaq Lawson guy.
Hey,
Oh,
love me some
cool.
Shaq Lawson.
Yeah.
Disappointed they didn't bring him back for one more run at it like they did Micah Hyde's old ass.
So I do have to ask, right? You bring up Micah Hyde, but I do want to ask, right? The defensive end position on this team has looked rough. for
Pedestrian.
weeks. Yeah, weeks.
I'll
You
say
got Rousseau
pedestrian.
going into a 5th-year option next year, which is $13 million, right? At some point, Buffalo, if they're really committed to a player, they want to buy out that 5th year. They don't like him playing on the 5th year. They know they can get him cheaper on the 5th year, and they want to buy out that 5th year. Is Rousseau playing at a level right now where you look at it and say, okay, we want to commit long-term to him, or is that only if Vaughn retires? You're like, okay, yeah, we'll commit long-term to you.
Isn't there an out in Vaughn's contract after this season? Can't they save quite a bit if they cut him?
There is.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question is Rousseau's been your best defensive end, right? And it's kind of like when Tyrod was your best quarterback for a while, right?
What's
like
that
he's
saying?
yeah, I mean, he's king of the crap heap, and
Yeah.
I think it's tough. I mean, can you argue, Paul, that you're going to get him at a discount after the way he played this year?
If you buy out the 5th year, you have a better chance of getting it cheaper.
Do you do what they did with Epinesa, where it's just like, hey, you earned like one more run kind of thing?
Yeah.
I mean, and would Rousseau be up for that? I think there's it depends. Would you get? You wouldn't give him. I mean, he's not going to demand a big deal, right? Like, he's not going to demand like Myles Garrett money. He's just he's not that good.
Now.
No,
Not right now. No,
so maybe now is
I
the
mean,
time to sign him and commit to him and still say we're still going to draft somebody. Maybe Javon Solomon turns into something, or maybe we're going to go draft a guy in the second, third round and see if they can develop into another 1A type of thing.
As Paul says, Rousseau only knows playoff football his whole career.
Sure does.
Right.
He doesn't know what that looks like.
No,
And then the other question is, I mean, I think historically, right? Like, we've watched these defensive players that have left. Do you miss any of them? Or are any of the guys that this team has evaluated and said, no, we're not going to bring them back? Have any of them gone on? Like, Tremaine Edmonds isn't doing anything in Chicago right now.
Levi Wallace looks rough.
Levi Wallace is looking bad. Like, Trey White, woof. Like,
right.
I mean, I guess the way where I'm at with it is, if McDermott is good at one thing, like, it's helping that talent evaluation from a scheme perspective, and they're pretty good about making decisions on whether to bring the guys back or not. Like, there haven't been a lot of guys that I've looked at defensively, at least, and said, why'd you bring him back? Or why'd you let him walk after things have played out? Like, remember when Jordan Poyer was going to be a huge loss?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, how's he doing in Miami?
We got rid of him a year too late. So in my eyes.
Yeah, and his wife's turned on the city now, too.
On Miami?
Shocker.
Oh, yeah. She made comments the other day about how, there's a reason that teams like Buffalo are good.
Oh, Donnie bringing the heat, almost like coaches make the players better.
That's a fastball right in Ryan's wheelhouse.
Yeah, that's a good one.
High and tight.
A good one. I do want to point out that SpotTrack has Rousseau's market value at $24.9 million as a reasonable comp based on age and annual 25 mil basically.
Yeah, I mean, but if the salary cap's going to go up, the salary cap's going to go up another what did they say this morning? 15 million.
He'll sign with the Bears.
And then if you get rid of Vaughn.
Yeah, but that's Josh's money, right? Like, you just, at this point, that salary cap increase,
the up, right? But I think you save more than that by getting rid of Vaughn, don't you?
You take a $15 million hit and you save 8. So how does that work?
Yeah,
Paul?
8.4. Yeah.
Yep. I don't know how that works.
Well, and again, like, if you're looking at that much of an increase, maybe you don't buy out his 5th year.
Yep.
right? Like his 5th year's at 13. Maybe you just leave it be, but then you risk losing him, and the Bills don't want to sign defensive ends. Like they have a propensity to not do it. They brought in Leonard Floyd. You knew you were without Vaughn. Like I get why they did it, but Vaughn was the outlier, and then the Leonard Floyd deal was because of what happened with Vaughn. Like that's the way that worked. It's not like the Bills are just they want to go out and spend money on defensive ends. No, they don't. They made a commitment to Vaughn. That exploded. Then they said, we have a huge gap here that we need to address. So now we have to do, we need to figure out a contingency plan. And that was Leonard Floyd. So don't think that the Bills love to sign defensive ends. They're not interested in signing free agent.
How do you guys think Leonard Floyd's feeling about making the decision to jump to San Francisco?
I know.
Probably as good as Tremaine.
Tough look.
Yep.
Any concerns, Mario? Any concerns about Cole Bishop, like not being able to even get on the field when we've seen the safety play that we've seen out of Hamlin?
Is he the safety version of Kareer Elam? Like,
when does that when does that become a question? The guy can't get on the field, right?
Yeah,
that's not even packages for him.
There's got to be certain elements of this defense where it's. Here's my best take.
The Bills have never run safety packages. That's not a fair statement to say, guys.
I think that Cole Bishop and Kareer Elam have more talent than who's on the field currently, but Christian Benford and Taylor Rapp have understood what McDermott wants to run and Babbage wants to run better. I think there's just a miscommunication that happens in practice where these guys aren't getting it. It's not clicking. And I don't know if that's the thing, but and then we harken back to time on task. How long has Hamlin been here? How long has Rapp been here? They just drafted Bishop. You know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe they cut ties with DeMar Hamlin at the end of this year, and then they put Bishop in there. Who knows?
Well, I mean, DeMar was a guy that we weren't even sure if he was going to make the team. But the fact of the matter is, you also had Mike Edwards here, and you preferred Cole Bishop over Mike Edwards.
You've got Lewis Seen on the roster.
Yep.
Like,
so and I think and Bishop's still dressing like.
And I think one thing that McDermott has done, one thing McDermott has gotten better at is willing to play rookies, right? Like he's gotten better at that. Coleman's playing significant time. Kincaid played significant time last year. They've got DeJuan Carter playing a lot of time this year on that defensive side of the football. Like he's not opposed to playing rookies anymore like he used to be. So I think the question really is like, what's up with this dude, right? Like he was a highly touted safety. He was one of the top safeties in the class, and he can't. Like he can't overtake DeMar Hamlin, who frankly isn't very good at the safety position.
No.
Like,
well, I think I'm
tired of this.
It's one of those things where I think he had.
So tired.
I think Bishop, if we're going back and we're trying to analyze it, he had a lot of freedom at Utah to do whatever he wanted. Like on any given play, any kind of defensive set, he was able to do whatever he wanted, move wherever he wanted. And I think being in a structured system like McDermott likes to run, I think it's been a. And Paul, you know this too. With the rookies that come in, this is your job now. You're not going to classes. You're not doing this. You're not doing that.
But let's unpack the broader point here, right? You're bringing Hyde back. Yes, it's a practice squad spot. Yes, he'll be able to dress for basically the rest of the season and it not cost you a roster spot, right? Like he's eligible to basically dress for the rest of the season. And is bringing Hyde back more of a statement on the play of Rapp and Hamlin? Because, I mean, let's be honest, DeMar Hamlin is a leading tackler on this team, probably not the role that Hyde would be playing at this point in his career, right?
No.
So is the Hyde signing more of a statement of we need to get Cole Bishop up to speed, and maybe Hyde is that mentor?
I'll say yes.
Because he's not a starter, if Hyde were a starter, he's got to worry about his own, but he's not going to be a starter. So is he there to make the safety play better and be a player coach, like Pete Rose style player coach? Like, is that where we are with the Hyde signing? Because I look at that and say, that is your typical, we need to sign a veteran. We need to sign somebody we trust. We're hoping we get a ring, right? Like that's what this is. But the expectation for him has to be different. He's not preparing as a starter, although I'm sure he is preparing. The expectation is, look around you, dude. You're not starting anymore. So you need to make the room better. Right? Like that to me is the conversation that should be had. And I'll be honest with you, I have absolutely zero faith that conversation has been had. Zero faith.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
because
what
if
it should have been.
if that's his role, then why not just bring him on as a coach, right?
Mhm.
Like if his role is supposed to be player coach, why add the player piece of it? Why like he gets a ring if he's a coach too?
Because it puts added pressure on Bishop.
Yeah, I mean,
learn.
unless
The learning curve is faster if he's a player. And hey, I might be. What's going on now?
yeah, I mean,
you
unless
brought
it's
this guy in, what's happening?
unless it's like Paul said, unless it's like a watch how Micah prepares, right? Like,
Oh yeah,
and Mara, you know from playing, right? Like it's different when it's a player versus a coach, right?
Oh, yeah,
Coaches who tell
100%.
you I used to play, like it's not the same, right?
Yeah,
so
no.
so maybe to bring him in as a player and say watch his in-week preparation, watch how he watches film, like watch how he breaks stuff down, watch how he prepares on game day, like maybe that's part of it because he was dressed today. He traveled with the team, or not dressed, but he did travel with the team. Micah did. They showed him the picture of him getting on the plane, right? So, maybe it is. Maybe it is part of that. Like this, it's just not clicking with this kid. Let's bring Micah back, show him how to prepare in a pinch.
Well,
Would we rather Micah Hyde out there? Would we rather AJ Klein out there? Like in a pinch, if somebody goes down, we've got a guy who knows the system who can be successful. Like we'll bring him in because I don't know. Maybe Lewis Seen's not picking it up either. They pulled him up on the roster today just to make him inactive.
Also depends what role you want to put him in.
Sure.
What if you drafted him as a safety? True, but what if you're putting him in that nickel role behind Johnson?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if Bishop could
no
play
way,
corner.
because they've already got Cam Lewis committed there, and they had Ingram committed there. Like
I'm just saying,
Ingram
if
playing
you
that role
need
today.
a guy that needs to stop the run, I feel more confident in Cole Bishop than Cam Lewis. And I know it sounds insane.
Yeah, I mean, if
there's
anything,
also 30 pounds and 4 inches different. Like,
if anything, he's that nonsensical big nickel concept, right? Like if anything, that's maybe where you look to change his role on it.
Paul, I'm over 100 pounds more than you. I would bet on your fastball versus mine any day of the week.
Yeah. Good bet.
Good bet.
All
right, hashtag
Okay,
Nation.
so here's a fun one.
Fine.
Here's a fun one. I didn't see it on McDermott. So here's another thing. Sean McDermott during the press conference just said they did not have 11 players on the field for the final punt that the Rams had. They only had 9 players on the field. There was an issue with the substitution, and that's why I don't know if it's why they couldn't get after the ball, but obviously you can't get out after the ball as well when 8 are rushing versus 10. So there you go. Take that for what you want. And obviously you can't call a timeout in that situation to get the guys on the field, but
Are we nearing the we're about to fire a special teams coordinator?
oh god, how does he? I mean,
it feels like it, right?
Right? Like, I don't know. It's the only coordinator he hasn't fired in his time to use as a meat shield, right? Like,
Yeah.
He should fire that time management guy in the booth.
oh god, yeah.
Like that tells him to do replays and stuff. The ex-ref or whatever. John Perry is his name, I think.
Well, but his challenges have gotten better since he was.
I agree.
Since he's been employed. I mean, his statistics have been. He hadn't won a challenge in like 2 seasons before John Perry got added to the staff. But that again, right? Like it happened to Denver last season. Like that's just unexcusable. It's like you had from the time that the Rams got the ball back. You had that entire time to get the special teams unit ready, to get that punt unit ready.
Yeah.
Like you had a minute 11 plus
With
timeout time
timeouts.
plus right. Like you
It's
had
a comedy
plenty of
of
time to
errors,
know
I
what your
swear to
situation
God.
was going to be when that happened.
Right.
So brutal.
Well, and again, this game was odd in a variety of ways because James Cook runs the ball 6 times. You had 1 target for your tight ends today. It was Dawson Knox. I think it was in the 3rd quarter. Like it was a weird game for Buffalo, and I'm glad to see them play a game where you could look at Josh's performance and say there's nothing that could have gone different for him.
No,
he played
offensively
out of his mind. Like if you're on the Josh Allen has to be MVP train, this is the game that you write down as saying this is his resume for why he's MVP. Because they have no business staying in that game with the way that defense played today. They had no business staying in that game.
And to the point, and to your point, McDermott is going to be able to look himself in the mirror and go, If we hadn't had that block punt that got returned for a touchdown, my defense did enough to win the football game, right?
That's what I'm saying. I'm almost curious if the
like we win that game
coordinator
42-37 if it's not for that block punt. Smiley, you got to go, buddy.
Brutal.
Yeah, well, and I think, and Paul Berg, he brings up a good point. He goes, "Oh, never fired a defensive coordinator. He just kind of left." And that's what happened. Everybody looked around like, "Where's Leslie? Oh, he's going to take some time off." Oh, okay.
Is he sick? No, he's not sick. He's just. Yeah.
I think.
What's that gif of Michael Scott where he just kind of like turns and like walks out? Like, was that how Leslie Frazier left?
Or like Homer Simpson just like kind of backed into the bushes.
That's it, into the bushes. How many times was Leslie Frazier asked if McDermott took over play calling? Do you know how seasoned Leslie Frazier is as being not only a head coach in the NFL, but also a defensive coordinator? To have to answer that question every week the Bills lost by like more than 6, like that had to be exhausting. I'm sure he was thrilled to get out of here.
And
he had to be thrilled to get out of here.
And Paul, a member of the '85 Bears.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Sure would love to. That's
for whatever
irrelevant.
That's worth.
But yeah, it's irrelevant now. But sure would be nice to have some help on the defensive backfield side right about now, wouldn't it?
He wants Paul Berg wants Vrabel so bad. He's put him in the chat 42 times.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, if you're gonna look for a head coach, this might be the cycle to do it. Just saying. I wonder if Ben Johnson would be interested in coming and calling and running a team for Josh.
Do you know that I would accept a 4-year deal to be the head coach of the Bills to work with Josh Allen, and they don't even have to pay me for the first 3. Like I would just be like, I'll work for free. Seriously, I just want to work with Josh Allen. I wanted to take this team.
You just want to kind of hang out with him, do fun stuff. You want to do Snow Angels with him?
I would. He'd probably do them with Haley though.
All right. Settle down.
It's funny because if this were the '92 Cowboys, the term "Snow Angels" would have an awful different feel to it, wouldn't
it? Very different.
Oh my God. All right. So I think that's it for us tonight. Hashtag Nation. Thank y'all for sticking around. Make sure you hit that like button on your way out. Remember, all of our socials will be in our link tree: TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Well, that happened. Tonight's show was sponsored by Mr. Rogers Homes. Thank you for joining us for the Hashtag Sports presentation of the Buffalo Bills versus the Los Angeles Rams. The Bills come up 2 points short in a game where possibly the only positive is that Josh Allen locked up the MVP tonight. So for Ryan and Paul.
Bold take.
You've been saying it all night.
Yeah.
Not really that bold. So for Ryan and Paul.
I'm interested in what the odds will do tomorrow.
That'd be that's huge. Yes. 6 touchdowns himself. Crazy.
What's funny is I have Josh Allen in a league that I'm playing Ryan in tonight, and the game is irrelevant to the standings.
Yeah, is that the league that I'm 0-13 in?
Yeah,
is that league? Is that league? Because I have Josh Allen in a league that I'm not playing Paul, but Paul is in and will not make the playoffs as well.
Yeah,
and Josh only put up 57 points for me in fantasy today.
Yeah.
So hashtag Nation. I know you guys love when people talk about their fantasy teams. It's pretty awesome. We're out of here. We're gonna be good. See you later.
Hello, fellow Bills fans. Sean Rogers, Realtor and lead of the Mr. Rogers Homes team. Did you know that real estate is one of the best ways to build wealth, and right now is one of the best times to own an investment property in Arizona? Please reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions so we can take the next step to your financial freedom here in the Valley of the Sun, utilizing real estate. As always, God bless America and go Buffalo!